Hello and welcome to the Westveil Archives. I'm Jenna, I'm an author-illustrator from Newfoundland, Canada, and this is my booktube/authortube channel. It's fairly new. You may already know me from my art channel, Jenna Gets Creative, or from my Twitter and Instagram platforms for this stuff, which for some reason are blowing up way faster than the channel. Today I am doing the Cyborg Tinkerer Book Tag created by Adventures with La Marie. This is in celebration of the Cyborg Tinkerer, which is Meg LaTorre's debut novel coming out November 17th of this year. Meg LaTorre is the face behind iWriterly, and she did formerly work in the publishing industry. She really knows what she's talking about, and like I said, this is her debut novel. It is a science fiction steampunk, and it is set in a circus. Meg LaTorre is running a pre-sale giveaway for the Cyborg Circus, and she is accepting advanced reading copy reader applications. I will have those links in the description down below. Go check them out. Let's get on with the tag. I'm going to be reading the questions out of my notebook because they're long. La Marie wrote long questions. Number 1. Gwendolyn Grimm. From feisty to sweet and innocent, what is your favorite type of protagonist to read? I definitely like the calm, cool, collected, calculating type. You know, think Sherlock Holmes. The ones that don't normally let emotions get in the way. Not to say that I like completely devoid of emotion characters. Obviously, I like them to feel emotion when it's appropriate, and everybody's going to have those moments where their emotions run high and they make snap decisions. But you get characters that are just purely run by their emotions, and those characters, you want to slap them. They're messing things up because they're constantly getting mad at people or not trusting people over stupid things. Number 2, Bastian Kabir. Not all romances start off on the right foot. What is your favorite romance trope? Examples being enemies to lovers or friends to lovers, etc. I love the fake real turn. That is where either one or both parties involved aren't really in love with the other person. Maybe they have ulterior motives, maybe they're doing a just go with it kind of thing. And this works out one of 3 ways. 1, the ulterior motive, the fakeness is never discovered and everybody lives happily ever after. 2, it is discovered, the person who did the deceiving has a lot of ground to cover to recover all of this, but it works out in the end and happily ever after. Or 3, it doesn't work out. The deception is discovered and it's irreparable. The relationship never recovers. All of those options are great. I personally prefer the one where it's discovered but resolved, but you know, all 3 of those are great. Number 3, Rora Lockwood. Some characters are extremely motivated to accomplish an end goal. What are some of your favorite character motivations? Examples being family, power, safety, career goals, etc. So most of those, I do really like the family-oriented ones, the safety-oriented ones. I like the self-improvement oriented goals. I also really like a true hero's journey, a true call to do something for the greater good. I don't like the selfish things, the career goals. I don't like the protagonist having a rise to power plot. I prefer the selfless ones or the humble selfish ones, like, you know, bettering themselves. Number 4, Celeste Beckett. Some villains are motivated to do evil for the sake of evil, while others might set themselves as the protagonists of their own tale. What is your favorite type of villain to read? Examples: morally gray, good versus evil. I love the morally gray ones. I love the misunderstood villains. Those are definitely the most entertaining ones to read because you really get in their head and you maybe even start to sympathize with them if they're written well. Alternatively, I really love it when the villain is just like the system, when you have an oppressive government, that kind of thing, but there's no one person to hate other than a figurehead that people recognize as just a figurehead, if anything at all. Number 5, Anchorage. In science fiction and fantasy, settings can range from magical forests to space battles to a dystopian near future. What is your favorite setting in science fiction and or fantasy, and why? Since the Cyborg Tinkerer is steampunk, if you have a favorite steampunk setting, give that a shout out too. So my all-time favorite setting for sci-fi and fantasy would have to be the 500 Kingdoms from Mercedes' 500 Kingdoms novels. It's Earth in the late medieval period, except in an alternate version where there's this magic called the tradition, where if you meet the hallmarks, the requirements of a fairy tale trope, then that is your life and you are obligated to do that thing and fulfill that role, lest the tradition change things around you to force you into that path. I just love the idea of what is basically a historical fiction, except you must follow these fairy tale tropes, or even worse things will happen. As for a steampunk setting shoutout, I'm gonna make a confession here. I love steampunk as an idea, as an aesthetic, but I haven't actually read a whole lot of steampunk other than J.D. Falkson's work, and I prefer his vampire stories to his true steampunk stuff. So my favorite steampunk setting is the world created for Treasure Planet, the Disney movie, and there's debate about whether that is steampunk or cyberpunk. I would definitely argue that it's steampunk. It's definitely Victorian steam age technology, but I can also see why you might call it cyberpunk. Number 6, Cirque du Bourg. Come one, come all to the mysterious circus of cyborgs. If you had to choose, what is your favorite book that features a circus or a competition? Hands down, always gonna be my answer, The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Number 7, The Scarlet Dragon. Some obstacles are armies, while others are sharp teeth and talons. What is your favorite kind of obstacle midway through a book before the climax? Examples: facing the henchman, battling a monster, solving a mystery, fighting a battle, etc. I like small battles and or mysteries and puzzles to solve that occur multiple times as the plot goes along and they build up to the big climax. I guess I really like formulaic type plots. I really like dystopian type books with competitions, life or death competitions, Hunger Games type thing. Not really into the facing the henchman type thing. That just seems like a D&D campaign made into a book, which I know exist, but you know, if that's not what I'm reading. Number 8, When She Falls for Both. Love triangles. Some people love them, some people hate them. What's your favorite love triangle you've seen in books? Or what is your least favorite love triangle you've read? So I don't tend to seek out love triangle stories, so I don't know what would be my favorite other than to cop out and say the one in the Cyborg Tinkerer. Read it. Request the arc. Pre-order. I do think Meg LaTorre handled the love triangle very well in this one. Least favorite that I've read? The Hunger Games. I know I just praised it in the previous question, but there you go. In the Hunger Games, you've got Gale pining over Katniss, you've got Peeta pining over Katniss, you've got Katniss kinda sorta having feelings for Gale at the beginning, you've got Katniss falling for Peeta after he's been abducted and taken away from her, and then nothing ever comes of any of it. And poor Gale, he got the short end of the stick. He deserved to find love. And if you're surprised that I didn't say Twilight, well, here's the thing. I've never read Twilight. I have seen the movies. The reason here is because when Twilight was coming out and it was popular, my sister was still in high school and I wasn't, and I was being the adult lady, reading hard science fiction and only hard science fiction other than my history textbooks. And I really wasn't interested in this silly little romance story for teenagers. And I was coerced into watching the movies, and the only good thing about them was shirtless Taylor Lautner, until I discovered that he was also Shark Boy from Shark Boy and Laugh-A-Girl, and then that was just weird too. And by the time I woke up to the fact that YA fantasy is actually great, I knew too much about what was wrong with Twilight, and I still wasn't interested. Number 9, the spaceship Obedient. In science fiction, the ship often acts as its own character, whether sentient or not. An entire world is often a hunk of metal or within the gravitational field in the case of TCT. What is your favorite ship from a story, or what is your favorite form of space travel? Okay, well, first of all, favorite ship, definitely the USS Enterprise, because I am a Trekkie at heart. Live long and prosper. But if we're picking ships from just books and we're going sci-fi and fantasy, I would have to say Paragon from Robin Hobb's world. Paragon is one of the live ships. I really hope that's meant to be live ships and not live ships. I haven't listened to any of the audiobooks, I've only read them. In that world, the live ships are, as the name implies, ships that are living. They are sentient, they have a bit of magic to them, and the families that own them, they raise their families on the decks of these ships, and they have a connection with the ship speaks to them telepathically, the ship becomes part of the family. These ships were all constructed from dragonwood, which is from the fossilized form of dragon eggs that never hatched. And dragons in this world are like phoenixes, they're constantly reborn. So a dragon in an egg has already been a dragon, already has memories of other lives and whatnot, because dragons never forget. Paragon was made from dragonwood from 2 different dragons, and as such has 2 dragon personalities. Sometimes the 2 dragons don't agree on the motivations. One dragon loves his family, the other dragon doesn't. And in the past, this ship has been owned by less savory people, by pirates who abused the ship and damaged the ship. This ship has been known to capsize itself and drown its crew. It has been known as the Pariah rather than the Paragon on several occasions. And in the Fitz and the Fool trilogy, they kinda, at this point, conclusion to those characters. Still really hope she writes more. It becomes a plot point that the live ships can be returned to their state of being dragons. And of course, Paragon really wants that, because Paragon is actually 2 dragons that are in conflict. So that would be my favorite book-only sci-fi fantasy ship. In terms of my favorite form of space travel, I really like it when sci-fi stories write space travel as being primarily done through wormholes or portals. I just think those are really cool. They just seem so much more realistic than technology that can make ships travel so much faster than the speed of light that you're traveling between star systems in a matter of weeks, let alone within somebody's lifetime. Final question number 10, the cyborgs. Not everyone is lucky enough to have been born into a loving family. Sometimes they find that love through others like them. What is your favorite story about finding family? Whether it's through long-lost relatives when characters thought they had none, or adopting people into their own family. So I thought long and hard about this one, and for this one I'm going to say Strays. This one was a webcomic. Technically it still is. You can still read it online. It's not being updated anymore. These guys, the 2 authors, Samantha Whitten and Stacey Pfefferkorn, they always had an end for the story in mind. They were always going to stop producing the comic when they got to a certain point. It's broken down into 3 books. And I say books because when you're an online comic, what does a book mean? But every time they got to an end of a book, they ran a Kickstarter to print it. And I found it quite late in the game. I was there for most of the 3rd book pages being released, and so when they ran the Kickstarter for that one, they decided to have all 3 of them printed again, and so I got them all. This is the 1st volume. I do have the other 2 down here. This is a world not too unlike our own in a medieval history kind of sense, but this is a world where there are 4 different species of human type people, creatures, who they have features of a particular type of animal when they're in their kind of human form, and then once they come into their magic and they learn how to use their magic, then they can transform into that animal. But then some are interbred with demons, so they have erratic power or evil motives, and so sometimes there are people who are employed as bounty hunters, specifically going after the demon characters. So in this book we have Mila, and she is a young wolf pup. What remains of her family is killed. Turns out her father was one of these demon hunters. When she's the only survivor, she's lost in the woods. She's found by Feral, who is also a wolf person, and he can't speak, he's entirely mute. He's a mercenary, and he, I guess in his opinion, makes the mistake of taking Mila in and ends up raising her, coaching her through her power coming in, that kind of thing. He has a friend named Holland, and he's a swan person. There's also a lady named Piper. She's a fox lady. She's very much done like a 50s pinup girl, and she's kind of a love interest for Holland and Feral at different times. And then there's Jaiku, not entirely sure. He's this mysterious, wise elder who pops in when he's needed most, and he's a deer person. I love this. You can read it for free online. They're having trouble with their primary website right now, but they've left a link on it to another place where you can go read it. So I definitely recommend checking it out. Strays Comics, Strays Online.